What digital signage is and what it is used for has certainly changed a lot in the last, let's say 20, 25 years, even 30 years since it really first showed up on the scene. One of the ways it's being used a lot now is sort of a more scaled down and focused product called room signs. And then, of course, room signs themselves, over the years, evolved into having different kinds of displays, different kinds of functionality, different kinds of calendars, and so on. And then ePaper technology really improved to the point where it could start being used as well. Well, here we are in 2025, and my guest today thinks that the age of the LCD desk sign is basically over, and the ePaper sign has come into its own. And we're going to talk today about why this is and how ePaper just makes much more sense than using those old LCD signs that we started off with back in the day. My guest today is Trey Hicks. He is COO and CSO of Visix. Hi, Trey. Thanks for coming on today.
Hey, Derek. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to talking about ePaper.
Excellent. I'd like to thank Trey for coming on, and of course everybody out there for listening to this episode of Digital Signage Done Right. I'll remind you that you can subscribe and share and review, and you can follow along with a transcript on the Visix website. Whether you're using digital signage or not, our podcast gives you practical tips for communications and content to better engage your audience. I'm Derek DeWitt. Welcome to Digital Signage Done Right. Okay, so Trey, you're pro ePaper now, huh? You're just like, forget the LCD stuff, man. ePaper's the way to go.
Yeah, well, we started working with ePaper technology just over a decade ago. And I have to admit, when we started investing in the technology and pulling product and software together, it wasn't too pretty. The ePaper signs were really dim. The pixel resolution wasn't very good at all. But I'm so glad that we started that early, because the journey has helped us understand the true benefits of the ePaper technology.
And clients have definitely caught up to that thinking. Tell us a bit about who's using ePaper and how they're using it.
The type of firms and organizations that are using ePaper today is very varied. Today we're working a lot with professional service firms, so law firms, consulting firms, accounting firms, and other large professional service organizations. Tons of companies and corporations, universities, K-12, hospitality, certainly even healthcare. I mean, really today, a lot different than when we started our e-ink journey. ePaper is making its way into every market, every vertical. And broadly speaking, what these different companies and firms and organizations are using ePaper for, it's pretty varied. It starts with meeting room signs, and then what's really taken off in the last couple years is using ePaper signs at your desk and at your workspaces for office hoteling. We know that hybrid work has taken off big time in the last couple years. Hybrid refers to where and when people work. And the way to really organize that is with office hoteling, which relates to how people actually use office space. Employees reserve or book a desk or an office for the day. So that's a big place that ePaper signs are showing up at the workspace, at the desk to support office hoteling. The applications and where ePaper is going just keeps going. Two other big areas I'll mention real quick. We have, lots of clients and lots of firms are using ePaper signs as room placards and also as digital nameplates, because, Derek, you and I can think about all the office spaces that we've been in where you have a printed physical sign made out of acrylic, the room numbers, all that stuff. And this is a Allison Smith's office. But if Allison Smith changes locations, changes offices or whatever, you might have to just replace that sign, physical sign altogether. Take the one you've got and throw it away.
Yeah, it reminds me of like in the old movies, when somebody would get fired from the company and then, there's a worker using a razor blade to scrape the paint off the window, the glass door that had their name on it, and then they have to bring in another guy to paint the new name, we've come a long way, baby.
Yeah, we have. Now all we have to do is just type in the new name and it magically appears on the e-paper sign outside the office. So, firms, universities, and companies, anybody involved in office hoteling, as they start to think about, well, what kind of display technology might help us elevate the workplace experience for our employees?
Right. We've seen tons of studies talking about why workplace experience is important. It's really a subset of the overall employee experience, which we know affects satisfaction, productivity, talent retention, lots of other bottom line metrics. And workplace experience includes all the tech and tools and how they support that employee experience and culture. Especially with office hoteling, which might be new to some folks, you don't want technology or systems that frustrate people. So tell us a bit about how ePaper supports the hoteling workplace experience.
Really what we mean is when employees come into the office, an employee who's booked a desk, for the day from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., whatever that time range is. When that employee comes to the office, we want it to be super easy for the employee to spot their desk, to know they're at the right spot. And that's why we want a little e-paper sign there or some kind of sign. And the other thing that that sign can do is give them a super easy way to check in for the day. So they just scan the QR code on the desk, they check in from their phone, and then they're set. It's just that simple.
Right. And then other people can also see, oh, this person not only reserved it, but they checked in. And so I can't sit there.
Yeah. And the little desk signs, the workspace signs also support hot desking. So maybe, Derek, you're heading to the office for the day and you forgot to book a desk in advance. Well, that's okay. Hopefully you're lucky and there's still, some spots available. But when you get to that little workspace sign, again, you're just going to scan the QR code. It's going to open the app on your phone for the office scheduling platform that you guys already use. And you're going to be able to book that desk on the spot. You're going to book it for the day, however long you need it. And then that little sign on the desk is going to update to say, hey, this workspace is reserved for Derek for these hours. It just makes it easier.
Right. So back off, buddy.
Yeah, that's my desk. The other thing that having the desk signs does, Derek, is it reinforces the use of office hoteling in the workplace. Why? Because visually, as employees come into that office, they physically see the presence of office hoteling in that space because they see those desk signs. It makes it easier to get buy-in and participation by employees because it's not just in the cloud.
Right. If you want to have a hoteling culture and want to get people to use the fancy scheduling system you have in place, you have to make it visible somehow. If it's just an app in the cloud, if people don't know they're supposed to book these shared spaces, then they're not embracing the hoteling culture that you're investing time and money to create. You just have a bunch of people sitting wherever they want and probably causing confusion. And it's important to use the system. If you're paying for a scheduling platform or occupancy system, you're likely doing it not only to improve things for employees. You're using the booking data and analytics to look at space usage and make real business decisions with that data. Can you reduce your real estate footprint? Can you repurpose some of the desks that aren't being used? It's all about cost management. So on that note, let's talk a little bit about total cost of ownership for ePaper.
This is just one of the many ways, Derek, where the traditional LCD display, while it can be great for the meeting room, we have a couple different meeting room signs, with the interactive LCD touchscreen and all that fun stuff. And they're great for meeting rooms. But Derek, I want to tell you where it really kind of starts to fall apart from a cost perspective when we talk about hundreds of desks and workspaces. When you look at desk sign solutions, from different companies, maybe Crestron, maybe Embrava, it's kind of like a one size fits all. Maybe there's only one or two products to choose from. When we take a hard look at it, what we see is that e-paper signs on a per sign basis start out less than half the price. For large enterprise firms that we're working with today, and many of those are global, we're talking about, 1,000 or more. It could be 2,000 or more. So it adds up fast. I mean, you take just, let's say, $150 difference in price, and let's multiply that out over just 500 workspaces. That's a cost difference of $75,000.
That's a huge cost savings.
Other advantages of using ePaper is the big three. And what I mean by the big three is cost to acquire or purchase the technology, the cost to install or deploy the technology, Derek, and also the cost to maintain it, to support it. Another factor is that the little LCD displays, they completely rely on a wired connection for power. And at first, Derek, you may be like, well, that's not a big deal. Okay, so there's one cable that you plug into a power strip, or maybe it's USB, you got to plug it in for power. We're really used to that. But the problem is, if you need to do that for 500, 1,000, 1,500, that's 1,500 opportunities a day for some of those to get unplugged.
Yeah, that's true. Especially if you have an in-office cat or something.
Yeah. We've all done it. You get to the desk and the battery's running low on your phone. And so you need to plug it in, and you're looking for a free plug-in, on the power strip or a USB port to plug that thing in, because you got to keep your phone going, right? And when you have 500, 1,000 or more desk signs in place, this creates kind of a nightmare for IT. And it kind of holds back the whole workplace experience, because employees come in and they're looking for their desk and they're seeing little signs that are blank. They're turned off because they're unplugged. If every desk sign has a cable, it just looks messy. Really what you want is you want a professional, clean work environment. ePaper signs are wireless and battery powered. They don't need to be plugged in anywhere. So what it allows our clients to do is to focus on where they would like to place the desk sign in that environment, at that desk. With a wireless and battery powered ePaper sign, you can place it, where you would like for it to be best. You don't have to worry about, oh, this thing has a cable. How am I going to run this cable from where I would like to place the sign to where it needs to plug in?
Right. I was just going to say, if the outlet's on the right side of the desk, well, I guess I got to put it over there. But if there's no cable, you can put it wherever you like.
Exactly. So let's say in one office, you've got 120 to put out. Well, if you can just go out and place those 120 desk signs, and sure, we've got different ways to secure them. A simple solution is the 3M adhesive strips, just to literally stick them in place where they need to be. So you can just go and put those in place at those 120 workstations. But now, if you have to route cables and tie down cables and make sure they reach to get plugged in, then that's a whole different deal.
Right. Again, like you said, if you're thinking of it just as a one-off, it's like, well, it's not really that big a deal. Now multiply that by 1,000. Hey, guess what? That's a day. Minimum one whole day's salary and one whole day's work minimum for one or two people to do this fiddly little work. It takes 15, 20 minutes each one. Well, there aren't that many 20-minute segments in the day. So when you scale up, it becomes a much bigger headache.
And let's talk about network connectivity for a minute, because that's a big one. So, you've got, again, maybe 500 desks that you would like to have desk signs to help improve the workplace experience. Well, with the traditional approach of the little LCD or the little tablet displays, each one of those has to be connected to the Wi-Fi network. This adds congestion to the already burdened Wi-Fi network with all of our phones and tablets and laptops. And the minute that office, that building, for one reason or another, they need to update the password for the Wi-Fi network, oh my gosh, you may have a few hundred desk signs in that one building where you got to go around and update all the passwords.
Again, that's like a day.
Yeah, it can be a nightmare. The really cool thing about the ePaper technology that we offer is it has its own dedicated wireless network. There's never a password to change at the desk. You've just eliminated all the congestion, all the password nightmares, and all the confusion, which means you've got a more bulletproof installation that is low maintenance compared to potentially a lot of maintenance.
Right. And ultimately, I mean, when you're looking at things from sort of a more macro level, I mean, this is a bottom line savings. You're not paying someone to waste their entire day doing this pretty repetitive task over and over again. Boom, you just lost a day. Well, only 5 work days in the week. So, you've just lost 20% of that person's weekly productivity to do this thing. That salary can now be spent doing something else. And another thing that comes to mind, of course, when we're talking about actual financial savings is obviously the electricity issue, because ePaper uses far less electricity.
Oh, absolutely. It's a night and day difference. When we think about the traditional little LCD displays, one plugged in at every desk, those little desk signs, you have to keep them plugged in 24/7, 365 days a year. You've got 500 desk signs in place. Those 500 desk signs are going to run 8,760 hours a year because they have to stay plugged in. They're like little computers. They're not something that you can turn off and turn on daily. They're always running. To contrast with that, if we think about the workday, let's just use a nice round number. Let's say, well, we really only need to refer to or to look at the desk signs about 10 hours a day, and there are about 250 work days in the average year. Well, that's only 2,500 hours.
Right. That's like 6,200 hours of waste.
Waste. Yeah, that electricity is really just getting burned up by hundreds of little devices. It really adds up. The e-ink technology, e-paper signs, they run on recyclable batteries for 5 years or more. These are e-paper signs. These are desk signs that automatically update throughout the day as people book spaces. So they're dynamic, they're automated, but yet they still run on batteries for 5 years or more, which is incredible. It's due to the bistable e-ink technology. When they're not updating, they're practically using zero power at all. They're in a standby mode, absolutely conserving power until it's time for them to update with a booking again.
Right. So that's even less that you're using it, even if you're saying you need 2,500 hours, but you don't need 2,500 hours of constant electricity use or battery use for ePaper and e-ink, because it's only using power when it changes the image. Which if I'm using it for office hoteling, it changed at the beginning of the day, and that's it. It doesn't change till I leave. So it only changes twice during the day, which is what, 1 second?
Yeah, and we're taking full advantage of that fact to maximize battery life. And that's why we can say with confidence, you're going to get 5 years or more from your desk signs because they're not updating 20 times a day.
Now, but these do use RF transmitters, though, and those also need electricity, yeah?
Yeah, that's a good point. The way that we update the e-paper signs, is with their own dedicated RF transmitters. They're just little small transmitters that you can literally pop into the ceiling or put in a closet. And but the cool thing there is, let's say you've got on the second floor, you've got 80 different desks reserved or, set up for office hoteling. Any of those can be reserved throughout the day. They all have desk signs. Well, those 80 desk signs are going to pull zero power from that building. However, for that floor, you might have one. And if it's a really big floor, you might have two. But these 1 or 2 RF transmitters, they're small and they are low power devices. In fact, they pull so little power that you can just power them over the network cable, with very common PoE switches. So for 80 devices, you have one thing to plug in compared to 80 devices pulling power all the time if you go the more traditional LCD display route.
It's funny, I'm reminded almost of my childhood, most of which was spent with my mother constantly yelling at us to turn the light off when you leave the room to save electricity. Well, these kind of turn the light off automatically.
Yeah, they do. They do. E-paper is just a much more sustainable solution. We already have billions of IoT devices in the world. So let's consider IoT devices like an e-paper sign or a desk sign that are more sustainable and more eco-friendly as we continue to use technology to help employees be more productive and to have a better workplace experience.
Now, you said this EPS stuff is really starting to take off in the last couple of years. Is everyone using it just for office hoteling? Are they using EPS signs for other things as well?
Yeah, great question. They're using it for all kinds of things. Really, anywhere dynamic information needs to be shown. Derek, you have likely seen it in the big retailers. Those big retailers are now using ePaper for the very benefits that we've been talking about. Certainly our focus is on, places where visual communication is happening for prices in stores, for product labeling and barcodes in warehouses, way beyond the meeting rooms, conference rooms, and office signage that Visix is focused on today.
We've talked quite a bit about office hoteling, and you also mentioned kind of up at the top hot desking, which is basically hoteling without the previous reservation. It's more spur of the moment, on the fly stuff. Now, I've been told nobody's doing it. Certainly not in the United States. Nobody's doing hot desking. Is that still the case, or is that changing? Are people starting to embrace this kind of more free-form way of reserving desks, spaces, lockers, and so on, simply because it's so easy with the technology?
The trend is maybe that's picking up a lot slower than the trend of booking a workspace for the day. From what we're seeing, and we have some incredible partners, that we have API integrations with, they provide, the reservation platforms, the booking platforms that our clients are using today to book spaces. And certainly our ePaper signs are what are showing those reservations at the desk. So I think the booking initiative is what's leading. And what we see more of is hot desking is really more of a factor of when your plans change or you forget to book a desk. It's just kind of the catch-up way to get a desk when you forgot to reserve one. That's really it.
Right. So should that occur, it's not complicated. It's, oh, I forgot. Well, beep, 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 beep. Oh, I'm done.
Yeah. And our partners in that direction, they make it super easy. You walk up to the desk that you want to grab. You scan the QR code, and literally in 30 seconds, you can book that desk, because when you scan the QR code, the app that opens up on your phone, it knows what workstation you're at. All you got to do is say, hey, I need this until 2 p.m. and hit book. I mean, it is so easy. So besides giving a physical presence to office hoteling, we want to just make it super simple, not only to find your place, but to check in or to grab a workplace on the fly. Because with ePaper, you walk up to the desk, you don't need to learn another UI or set of buttons and touches that you need to do to check in or to book the desk on the fly. You just simply scan the QR code, and once again, you're using the same platform that you always use. Finding a desk next to your work buddies, you're always using the same platform. You don't have to learn how to use some other little interactive device at the desk.
I rather think that's what technology should be doing. It's supposed to make things easier and faster.
And that's the wild thing about ePaper. As we go from talking about broad use applications from the conference room, the huddle room, the meeting space, the office placard, the digital nameplate, the warehouse sign, when we go from broad and we zoom in to what we've talked about mostly today, and that's using ePaper signs for office hoteling, because that has so many more endpoints. Instead of 20 meeting rooms, we're talking about, 1,200 desks. The big three are much more critical as it relates to cost, time, support, and usability.
So, to quote Full Metal Jacket, how about getting with the program? Why don't you jump on the team and come in for the big win? In this case, the team is Team ePaper and e-ink. If you're not using them, you really seriously might want to start thinking about it. It's going to save you time. It's going to save you money. It's easier to use. They've gotten quite fast. They're actually getting pretty good with the quality of the definition. Though, again, you're not putting up a painting here. You're just putting up some basic information. All around, it just makes more sense. I predict that come 5 years from now, almost everything is going to be ePaper, because the technology is also improving all the time. Every year we see them get faster, bigger, higher resolution. And so I think we're going to really see pretty soon it be the only one that makes sense. I think it's going to be like VHS. it's just going to win.
Yeah, I think so, Derek, especially for office hoteling. But I should say, not only for office hoteling, but in many areas, it's just a great technology for communicating information, data, bookings, all that stuff at many endpoints. And I would say really pay attention to what we're doing with ePaper in the coming weeks, because as you made reference to, they're going to see the type of visuals and how we're displaying information, really kind of go to the next level in the coming weeks, because we have a new 4-color technology that we're going to take full advantage of as we continue to show how ePaper signs and e-ink signs can be used in many different applications in the workplace and beyond.
Great. That sounds exciting. I can't wait. Well, all very interesting stuff. I'd like to thank my guest today, Trey Hicks, for talking to me. He is the COO and CSO of Visix. Thanks for walking me down the EPS garden path, Mr. Hicks.
Sure, Derek. It was a lot of fun, and I look forward to the next time we catch up.
All right. And of course, I remind everybody that you can read our conversation as well as listen to it on the Visix website under resources and podcasts. And you'll find some helpful links there as well. For more free stuff, head to resources on Visix.com for guides, videos, and more to help with your visual communications. Please subscribe and share, and contact us for information about our digital signage solutions.